Success Discussions. Tonight we're going to be talking about perception. I'm Tiffany Kelly with TK Coaching Company, encouraging you to get in the game. We also have Tiffany Domina. Tiffany, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is I'm the CEO. First, I wanted to tell my story of how perception for my life. Um, I wrote a book about perception as I was going through a journey of finding my purpose, and so my perception changed when I realized that my perception was tainted, or when I realized that my perception was one-sided and that everybody doesn't see things the same way as I do. And once I realized that, then I realized that I needed to ground my perception on something so that I can understand people better, and so that I can be more magnetic, but also so that I can build better relationships and sustain them. So perception was a journey, and it led me to my purpose. And yeah.
Well, I have a question for you. What would be, if you had to give a definition of perception, what would be, how would you explain perception to someone? What is it?
Oh, perception is the way you view things, the way you taste things, when you like the way your senses pick things up, and how you perceive it. So we each we each have a different one. If I taste mashed potatoes, I might think they're salty, but you might think they're perfect. So we each have a different perception. That's the unfortunate thing about it, because like most of the time we act based on what we see or what we feel or whatever, and it's not consistent with the way everybody else understands things. So it leads to a lot of unforgiveness and conflict.
Okay. So one of the things that I heard what you were saying about, really, like, perception is your reality. Is that you perceive that becomes, that's pretty much the way you see.
Right.
That doesn't make it the reality for someone else.
No, it doesn't.
And what is it? I guess maybe an example where you had a negative perception about something.
A negative perception of something. Um, it happens. um, I'm more open at
Hmm.
this point, but a negative perception, when I park with my son, I perceive somebody based on their what they were wearing, and um, like it was a lady and she had tattoos all over, and she had piercings all over, and so I had a perception about her. But when I got to talk to her, I said hi and I introduced myself, and when I got to talk to her, I understood the reason why she did that to her body. I understood that, like, for her, she defended herself, but like that was her defense mechanism. She felt like it made her look tough.
Yeah.
And so she did that to her body because it caused other people to perceive her as being a tough person. So um but perception could have blocked me from having a relationship with her, because I could have done the same thing that most people do, which is kind of what she intended.
Hmm.
um I could have, and that she's still a beautiful person and God still put her here despite what I may think. Like, if she crossed my path, she has a purpose. As much wealth as I can from that experience. So yeah, that was my experience with perception. It was actually really eye opening for me, and it was really eye opening for her too, because she was actually racist, and to respect black people more because she felt like really rejected her, partially because of her decision to cover her body with tattoos. But yeah, it was transforming for both of us because she had a different perception of the African American people, and I had a different perception of a person with tattoos from head to toe.
Mm. I like to go give a example of a way that perception had blocked me. I had been really asking God to open my eyes as to see what He sees. And I remember one day I was going to the bank, on my way to the bank, and I was going to get some money out of the bank. Well, I had looked on my account, and I looked at the account, and in one account I had very little, and it was probably like even $7 or something. And so I was having a tantrum, really, like having a tantrum with God, like, okay, now I pay my tithes on time, I'm supposed to be the head and not the tail. I'm supposed to be the lender and not the borrower. I should not have to be, my account shouldn't be this low. Like, I'm faithful in tithing. What's the problem? Like, I'm having this conversation on my way to the bank to withdraw $20 account. And so at the time, there was this book that I wanted to buy called The 40-Day Soul Fast by Dr. Cindy Trim. And the book was like $15 and something, and I was real frustrated because I'm like, two things. Let me back up. Two things. One, it was Chicken Tuesday. So on Tuesdays, Popeyes has chicken it used to be $9, but now it's gone up to $1.19. So I was like, I'm gonna buy me this chicken because I wanted some chicken. So I'm going to the bank now. When you go to the bank, you have to draw out at least $20. Right. So I'm having this conversation with God about not having enough money because I want to buy this book. While all the while, I'm going to the bank to withdraw $20. Now, my perception was I had lack. I didn't have enough. But I'm on the way to the bank to withdraw $20.
Yeah.
Because this one account didn't have what I felt like I needed, but I had the money in another place. And so as I was taking, it just kind of hit me, and I had to just sit there and laugh and then apologize because, repent, because I'm like, you really have given me enough. I had enough to get my chicken and get the book. But my perception at the time when I looked at it, it looked like I did not have enough in one case. I did have more than enough in another. Because of my perception, I was causing agony. I was frustrated, when all the while, when I looked through another lens, when God opened my eyes, I actually did have it.
Right.
So, perception sometimes, it can be positive, it can be negative, but I think the biggest thing about perception is having the right thinking. Kendra, can you give us some examples of, I guess, perception in your life?
I think the big thing as far as perception in my life is how people sometimes can perceive me. One big thing is people still have stigmas about hair, which is something that, I thought that we had moved along from that point. African American female and working in corporate America, people perceive me different. Has been something that I've been dealing with. So it's very interesting, I guess, in my life to see how people perceive me when they see me, but then when I start to speak, they're like, oh, you actually know what you're saying of that lies way outside of just my physical appearance or the appearance of what my hair looks like.
Right.
That's one big thing that I have just within my life, but I think that people's perceptions are real to them, but sometimes that you have to really be able to show people that I am well above what you perceive me to be. Like one aesthetic thing that you see, such as hair or anything, is I'm way more than what meets the eye.
Right. Song about it. I am not my hair.
Right. Exactly.
And it's interesting because perception in everything that we do, and one of the things that I've been reading some of Tiffany's book, which is really powerful. If you don't have it, it's called, I'm going to show you right here. Can y'all see it? There it is. So it's called Perception, the World's Most Affluent Leader, How to Connect Love, Power, and Perception. And so because we are human beings, we see with our eyes, and so we interpret. We have like experiences, memories, everything that we see, we connect it to whatever it is we're looking at that time, whether it be positive, negative, true, or false. Like Tiffany, you were saying, you saw those tattoos. Well, something in your mind connected tattoos to be something.
Right.
If it had not, then you wouldn't have perceived her the way that you did. And then once you talked to her, that barrier was broken down. Just because somebody has connected the perception of dreadlocks to be something negative, or to just grouped all these people in this one category, and then once you come forth, you realize that that's not necessarily a true for everybody. So perception has such an impact on our lives because it is the way that we see things, the way that we create things. Because whatever you believe, your thoughts become things. It becomes your reality. So I think one of the things that I've learned is environment was the same when I was saying about the thought of lack. My environment, nothing had changed on the physical level. The only thing. So how many of us are? How many people go through life like that? Not changing that lens and actually getting a reality check that this perception is not working for me. How can you guys think of some ways in which maybe you've seen other things or perception with other people that may have been a hindrance, or even if you can think of one that made something positive and kind of catapulted a person to the next level? Do you all have any stories of that?
Yeah, I have a recent. I have two examples. One of them is a guy. He started working for. We hired him, and he had really kind of low esteem, and over time he started to see that he is a king. He's a royalty. He's a lineage of guy, and watched him transform, because when I first met him, he came, and actually we had put an ad up online that we needed somebody to come and do work for us. I don't know if he's here, but to come and do work for us. And so he responded to the ad, but
And we're moving.
okay. So when I was trying to make sure he wasn't here, because who wasn't here? So he responded to the ad, and so when he came, the way he presented himself made us underestimate his skill, because he presented it like he wasn't confident about his message, about his work, or his skill. He didn't tell us like questions, and he had uncertainty, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when he actually started to work, we found that it's more of a communication problem than it is a like skill problem. He's very skilled.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one, but that was part of his perception of himself. He didn't have a high perception of himself, so he didn't invest in the skills and stuff that it will require for him to communicate that he's highly skilled. But then he started working with somebody who had a high perception of themselves, Stephen Domina. And so it started to make him see a difference in how he presents himself to customers versus how Stephen was doing it. And so that experience really taught me a lot about how perception can be either magnetic or it can be a deterrent for other people, relationships with you. Mm-hmm. It's really like, it makes the difference how you perceive anything, relationships, wealth, or anything else. So originally when he first came, I I'm trying to make my car payment so that I can at least have a shelter. I know I have a shelter now. I said you can't perceive things like that, because for me, the determination has to be there. The value of yourself has to be things like that to come up. Like, for some of us, we have a high view of ourselves, so we won't allow things like that to happen. And that's all about perception. Your perception of yourself gets you rich or poor. And your perception of yourself causes you to invest yourself in relationships with rich or poor. So, and that makes or breaks your economic status, your spirituality, and everything else. So that's my.
Thank you for sharing. That was awesome. Do you have something you want to add, Kendra?
I've encountered a similar situation with my team members who had a very, very negative. Everything that she did was wrong. She was super nervous. She thought that she didn't have to stick with the job that she was hired to do. And so it's so important, I guess, to be able to be sensitive to that when people have those thoughts, because all it was for us to step aside and for me to really just talk to her and say, let's talk through the process. Like, you know what you're supposed to do. You know how to do it. It's just the execution. She seems to be like, well, I'm not good enough. You know, I saw this person and she did it better than me. She speaks better than I can and can talk to other people. And so being able to just be sensitive to that and being able to pull her to the side and say, hey, you have this. This is what this have. And it took several times, but being able to just show her own abilities, sometimes we get in our own way of that. So it took for me to say, hey, this is what I see in you. She had to take ownership at some point to say, oh, I get it now. I see it. The light bulb had to go off. But similar to what you were saying, Tiffany, it's like she just had to see what we saw in her to be able to display all of her abilities. Now she's, one of our top performers.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it's even like, I think another powerful thing is what God sees in us. And I know for everybody that's really difficult, but his perception of us is just so, I mean, it's not comprehensible to anybody below the sun. And so because of that, we aspire and we learn and learn, but that process terminates when we die and we reach our eternal home. Mm-hmm. But his perception of us is just like, it blows you away, and I don't have any other words for it. And when we can understand even a portion of it, it transforms our life, because then we understand that we should have more than what we do. We should be more than what we are,
I can agree. I agree with that. The things that I've been reading, the Course of Miracles, and in the Course of Miracles, it talks about that having right thinking. And I think that in have right thinking, which is until you see yourself the way that God sees you, then do seem to be skewed, or they do seem to be, encounter some difficulties simply because we don't have the right perception. So the right perception, of course, is God's perception. So in order to have the right perception, we have to spend time with the Creator. You have to learn, how does God actually see me, which in turn will build how you see yourself and who you believe yourself to be. And the more that you learn about that, the more you can incorporate it, and the more that it shines through to you. And then you can see that in other people, like Stephen, and like you did with the woman that you were working with, Kendra. It's so powerful when others can see things in you that you can't. And then they can point it out, and you say, oh, okay, I can do that. You know what I mean? And then it just becomes a habit, and then you can perform better. You feel better about yourself, all because now you have the right thinking. So I think as the body, it's important for us to pull those things out of others, and which is one of the reasons why we're having the success discussions, because you're not taught this in school, you know. You're not taught this in school, and oftentimes you're not taught it at church. You know, it's just things, some of the things that we just don't get that are pivotal to our lives. You know, so understanding that you'd have to have right thinking, and that right thinking comes from God, then you can begin to just really it will catapult your life, and then you begin to truly unfold into who you truly are. So, Kendra, do you have any more? Do you want to add to that, or?
I would say, just thinking of perception, I'm reminded of a song. I'm a singer, so I'm reminded of a song that says, "Open my eyes, help me believe I am what you see." You know, and just
No, we can't hear you.
Just marinating on that, like you guys said, touch me, but he see me victorious. He see me able, that you're able. He see me rejoicing that I have survived. My eyes help me believe I am what you see. I may have got some of the words wrong, but but that's what I'm reminded of. You know, just like you said, just, you know, having the mindset to see and see what God, how God sees us. He sees us in a very different light than what we may see ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree that like one action step to get into a new perception and a right perception is to just start to talk to God and ask Him, like, Father, how do you see me? And I would say another one is to, when you get thoughts of doubt, to say no and to say me, you know. And you have to learn how He does see you in order to know how He doesn't see you. But you'll know that you have to know, you study, you have to know you were created good, and that you were created as royalty, and you were created to have the authority of heaven, which means that you have the power and the authority of all capabilities that you believe are wrong. And from then on, when those I can't thoughts come up, you say, no, actually I can. No, I'm not allowing that to break the manifestation of this right now in my life. I'm not allowing it. You combat those thoughts. You replace your weaknesses with the power of God. You start to put on your sword and fight with it. And the sword of the Spirit is really powerful. And it says that the Bible is sharp as a double-edged sword. So we know that the Bible is really powerful. It's important for us to appetite for it and a diet for it. And even it's important for us to take that in and to pray to God and add all those habits into our schedule, so that way we can be powerful when those thoughts come up, because I is not consistent with God's will. I can't is not what He said. He said that we can, and He said that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And we have to break those I ams too, like when we say that I am something, ... we have to break those I ams that aren't consistent with being in the image of God. And so when we hear something like you are, it's from the momentum of the self-doubt that we have in our minds. So that's my point.
Well, thank you. I think this is each one of you, and I think that we should include those action steps, but also not just look at perceptions that we have within ourselves, but also perceptions that we have within others. And it could be even things as well. And so sometimes if, the Holy Spirit does this thing of convicting you when you're thinking something that's not in according to His will or His way. And so let's just, as we are moving forward, be mindful of the perceptions that we have of others, the perceptions that we have of ourselves, and even the perceptions that we may have in situations. And if it feel, if your gut is feeling, you know, right, or you're having that feeling that's not easy, then you may want to ask yourself, what is the perception that I have in this situation? And then just replace it with something positive and with the Word of God and something that we know is right thinking. Do you all have anything else before we end tonight?
I don't close it up well, sister.
Okay.
I
All right.
agree.
So this was our success discussion about perception and the influence that it has on your life. We hope that whatever was said here tonight will help you to catapult you to be your best self. I'm Tiffany Kelly. This is Tiffany Domina and Kendra Green. We thank you for tuning in, and good night.